Let's face it, for some people, poetry can be about as exciting as watching paint dry, especially for middle school students. However, with the right approach, we can turn poetry into something that our students actually look forward to studying. So in today's video, we're going to focus on an activity that can be used to hook your students at the start of your poetry unit. It is a high-impact activity that makes reading, writing, and analyzing poetry something that students will actually be excited about. We call this activity Guess Who. But before we dive into this video, please click subscribe where you're watching so you can see more videos like this one. All right, so to set up the Guess Who activity, you want to choose a few poets and 1 to 2 of their poems for your students to analyze. You as a teacher will determine the theme or themes from these poems, and you'll list those themes on the board. Now at this point, you're not going to tell your students anything other than the themes of the poems. Don't even let them know that the themes are from poems that you've already selected and that have already been written. The next thing that you'll do is you'll instruct students to compose their own poems centered around those same themes that you put on the board. So you can give as much or as little direction with this part as you'd like. You can make sure that they include certain figurative language, 100% include that if you want to. Or do you want your students to work with a partner? 100% fine, right? You want them to do it independently? That's totally optional as well. Like however you want to set this up does not matter. But once students have spent time writing, you'll gather all of their poems, so all of your students' poems. And this whole part should be done in one class period. So that's what you do day 1. On day 2 of the Guess Who activity, you'll hang excerpts from students' poems and those original poems that you gathered all around your classroom. Each excerpt should be on a different piece of paper so that students can walk around and read a bunch of different poems. Side note that it's super helpful to number each poem that you hang up so that this next part of the activity is going to flow smoothly for you. So everything's hung up, everything's numbered. Have students number a piece of paper that's theirs with however many poems that you've hung up. So students will be walking around and analyzing each excerpt, and then they'll be guessing if the poem was written by a student or by a famous poet. So as students walk around the room, they can use the following questions to help them analyze the poem. So number 1, and again, take a screenshot of this. Number 1, how does the poet use literary devices such as imagery, symbolism, and metaphor to convey the theme? Number 2, what is the poem's tone and how does it contribute to the overall meaning of the stanza? Number 3, how does the poet use language and word choice to create a specific effect or tone? 4, how does the poet use imagery and symbolism to reveal deeper meanings? And 5, what is the poet's attitude toward the subject and how is it conveyed in the poem? And then last, guess who? Is it a student poet or a published poet? And this is where students will write down whether or not they think the poem was created by a classmate or by an actual poet. So if you have a large class, and this will just be way too long of an activity to include excerpts of, everybody's poems as well as published authors, at the very beginning, you might consider having students work in groups of 3 or 4 or whatever it might be to write a single poem for them. Using this Guess Who activity is such a great way to kick off your poetry unit because it allows students to actively engage with poems and to use their critical thinking skills. It encourages them to closely analyze the poem's themes, the style, and the language in order to determine the author, which is also kind of fun, right? It gives them also an opportunity to apply what they've learned about different poets and their styles to the task at hand. And additionally, by trying to guess the author, students are really encouraged to pay attention to those small details and to the technical elements of the poem, which is ultimately going to deepen their understanding of the poem. Moreover, it really allows them to appreciate the work of their classmates and to see the potential within themselves. And I love it too because it also allows them to discover different poets, their work, and the rich heritage of poetry. It is such a fun and interactive activity for students as they collaborate to identify the author of the poem, which can really foster a positive and supporting learning environment for your students. So all of these elements together make the activity a super engaging one, something that encourages students to actively participate in their own learning and actively question and analyze the poems that they are reading in your class. So let us know if you decide to give this Guess Who activity a try. We'd love to hear what your students thought of it, what you thought of it, and how it went for you in your classroom. All right, make sure that you're subscribing to our channel for more videos like this one.